Imagine for a moment that every challenge you face, every fear that lingers, and every self-doubt that weighs on you isn't just an obstacle, but a kind of map guiding you toward your true calling. Consider the possibility that the key to discovering who you are and what you're meant to do lies in the very parts of yourself you've tried to dismiss or suppress. Today, we'll explore a transformative idea from psychology and philosophy, Carl Jung's theory of the shadow. This isn't just an abstract concept. It's an understanding that can profoundly reshape your life. By the end of our time together, you'll grasp not only what your shadow is, but also how it carries the secret to your purpose, your potential, and your freedom. The final insight we uncover may be the most powerful revelation of all. Let's pause to reflect on that metaphor of a map. We usually think of fear and doubt as experiences to overcome, banish, or ignore. Yet, if we see them as markers that highlight our deeper selves, a completely new perspective emerges. Imagine opening a treasure map and noticing that the X marking the treasure is placed in the darkest, most unexplored region. It might feel ominous at first, but that's also where the true reward lies. In essence, the parts of you that you typically try to hide could be pointing you toward the hidden gems of your personality, your strengths, passion, resilience, and creativity. When we speak of discovering a true calling, we often look outside ourselves, wondering if we'll find it in a new job, a major life shift, or a random spark of inspiration. But, according to Jungian thought, the key is frequently buried in the aspects of our psyche we're least eager to face. Think of the times in your life when a fear turned into motivation, or when a doubt forced you to reevaluate a situation, ultimately leading to growth. These instances aren't coincidences. They're glimpses into how the shadow can become a teacher rather than an enemy. Carl Jung, one of the pioneers of depth psychology, believed that the shadow is the unconscious side of ourselves that we often reject. It's made up of all the traits, drives, and dimensions of our personality that we think are unacceptable or shameful. Yet, paradoxically, this shadow contains the seeds of our greatest gifts and the blueprint for a meaningful existence. Consider how often we resist certain thoughts or actions simply because they make us uneasy. How often do we judge others for traits we secretly see within ourselves? If you've ever noticed yourself being strongly triggered by someone else's behavior, there's a solid chance it's because they have tapped into a part of your shadow. Jung famously wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." The shadow isn't purely about darkness, it's about possibility, about the potential we bury because of fear or shame. To expand on Jung's statement, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. We might examine a personal example. Suppose you meet a friend of a friend who boasts about their accomplishments every chance they get. You might find yourself rolling your eyes, feeling exasperated, and thinking, why are they so arrogant? On a surface level, it appears you dislike arrogance in them, but shadow work suggests turning this question around. Is there a hidden part of you that longs to speak freely about your own achievements? Could it be that your frustration arises because you too have a desire for recognition, but you've suppressed it for fear of appearing self-centered? By investigating these moments of irritation, you start unearthing parts of yourself that you've locked away. It's not that you need to become boastful, but by acknowledging your own desire to celebrate personal success, you can find healthier ways to express it. Rather than condemning or denying your need for acknowledgement, you might channel that energy into positive forms of ambition, creativity, or leadership. Pause and consider, are there parts of yourself you keep hidden from others, or even from your own conscious mind? Perhaps it's a fear of failure, a deep-rooted anger, or an envy you're reluctant to acknowledge. Maybe it's a passion you've cast aside as impractical or somehow wrong. What if these traits or emotions weren't flaws to eliminate, but messages waiting to be fully understood? Jung believed that by facing our shadow, we can integrate it into our conscious awareness, leading to what he termed individuation, the process of becoming whole. This is no easy task. It demands bravery, honesty, and a willingness to confront what lies beyond our comfort zone. But the rewards are boundless. Take a moment to think about your everyday life, moments at work, at home, or alone with your thoughts. Is there a consistent pattern of thinking or feeling that you suppress because it doesn't align with who you believe you should be? For instance, if you've been raised to value politeness above all else, you might stifle any anger or frustration you feel until it suddenly erupts in an argument or meltdown. Shadow integration would involve recognizing that anger early on, exploring its triggers, and learning how it might serve as a protective boundary rather than a destructive force. Jung's concept of individuation involves weaving together all these neglected or uncomfortable threads of our personality into a tapestry that reflects our complete self. Imagine each unacceptable trait, anger, envy, fear, as a color of thread. Leaving these colors out results in an incomplete design. Incorporating them, however, can yield a vibrant, complex piece of art. This is the essence of individuation, not discarding the less flattering aspects of who we are, but embracing them in a way that fosters growth, understanding, and balance. Jung described individuation as a journey to discover who we truly are, beyond just the persona we show the world. It's about acknowledging that our greatest advancements don't stem from rejecting the shadow, but rather from welcoming it. Think about mythic heroes. Most of them face a defining moment where they confront their own darkness. Hercules had to battle not only external monsters, but his own rage and frailties. Luke Skywalker had to reckon with the darkness within himself before he could fully embrace the path of a Jedi. These legendary stories reflect our internal psychological adventures. The real question is, are we prepared to start that journey ourselves? Will we look squarely at the parts of ourselves we've long denied and ask, what are you trying to teach me? One way to visualize the hero's journey in modern life is to consider any pivotal transformation you've undergone. Perhaps it was recovering from a big setback, like losing a job, ending a relationship, or moving to a new city. In that period of uncertainty, you might have encountered hidden aspects of your own personality, maybe a stubbornness, a tendency to panic, or a surprising wellspring of resilience. By facing those traits, you gained deeper insight into who you are and what drives you. If you're a fan of stories like Batman, you'll notice that the hero's confrontation with darkness is not a one-time event. Bruce Wayne repeatedly grapples with his own fears, guilt, and anger, all of which feed into the creation of Batman. This cyclical process of facing the shadow is exactly what Jung refers to as individuation, an ongoing expansion of the self that integrates all dimensions of who we are. Each new challenge presents another chance to learn from what we usually hide. Jung's viewpoint invites us to see the shadow, not as an adversary, but as a mentor. It communicates through our dreams, our fears, and even our interpersonal dynamics. Have you ever had a recurring dream or found yourself strangely drawn to a particular concept, person, or activity? These could be signals from your shadow trying to speak up. Working with the shadow starts with noticing. Pay attention to the emotions that feel especially strong or out of proportion. They often serve as clues to the parts of yourself you've pushed away. Once you pinpoint these traits, the next phase is acceptance, not in the sense of indulging every impulse or desire, but in the sense of recognizing these aspects of yourself without condemning them and seeing the role they play in your life. Dreams can sometimes be perplexing or outright bizarre, but Jung believed that these nightly narratives are bursting with symbols from the unconscious. Let's say you regularly dream about being chased. This might indicate a hidden fear, or an aspect of yourself you're avoiding, or perhaps you dream of failing a test over and over, suggesting you're feeling unprepared or judged in some part of your waking life. Shadow work urges us to ask, is there an emotion, past event, or an acknowledged desire related to this dream scenario? By contemplating the dream's emotional resonance, we start decoding messages from the unconscious. Acceptance in this Jungian framework doesn't imply letting your suppressed anger run wild or fully giving in to envy. Rather, it's about letting these feelings have their say, understanding their origins, triggers, and potential lessons. Suppose you realize that your envy toward a friend's achievements is actually pointing you toward a longing for your own creative outlet. This could be a wake-up call to nurture your gifts or set personal goals. In such a scenario, envy becomes a navigation tool. Once acknowledged, it can guide you toward areas of life that need your attention rather than festering in the background as a purely negative force. Take a moment to imagine how freeing it would feel not to dread your so-called flaws, but to view them instead as gateways to self-improvement. Picture how being true to all parts of your identity could make you more genuine and self-assured. In the upcoming sections, we'll dive into more specific techniques for spotting and assimilating your shadow. We'll discuss ways to transform what seems like darkness into a source of enlightenment and explore how this integration can illuminate your life's mission. Remember, there's a crucial insight still ahead. Stick with us, because by the time we finish, you'll hold not only a map for recognizing your shadow, but also a strategy for channeling it toward your destiny. Often, the biggest hurdle is the stigma we attach to our so-called negative emotions and traits. Society might label rage, jealousy, or insecurity as unacceptable. We, in turn, bury them. But these qualities don't vanish. They remain within us, influencing our thoughts, actions, and stress levels in indirect ways. By seeing them as portals to growth, we shift from a stance of self-rejection to one of self-inquiry. For instance, if you find yourself consistently struggling with procrastination, your first instinct might be to label it a flaw. Through shadow work, you might discover that the delay stems from a fear of failure or perfectionistic tendencies, both related to deeper emotional layers. By naming and understanding these factors, you stand a better chance of addressing the root cause, maybe fear of judgment, rather than just battling the symptom, procrastination. Let's delve even deeper into the enigma of the shadow and unravel how recognizing this concealed side of yourself can unlock not only your purpose, but also a deep sense of inner harmony. The shadow expresses itself in numerous ways, through habits, relationships, and especially emotional reactions. Have you ever exploded with emotion, only to look back in confusion about why you felt things so intensely? In these moments where emotions eclipse rational thought, you're often getting a peek at your shadow. But what grants the shadow such a grip on us? Jung asserted that it's precisely its unconscious nature. The more we ignore or bury an aspect of ourselves, the more influence it wields. It's akin to forcing a beach ball under the water. The harder you press, then the more forcefully it pops back up when you tire. Think about that beach ball analogy in practical terms. Perhaps you've spent years downplaying your need for validation, dismissing it as petty or vain, but then, seemingly out of nowhere, you notice yourself posting more frequently on social media, fixated on likes and comments, or feeling deeply hurt when you don't receive the recognition you hoped for. What's happening is that your buried need for appreciation is pushing its way to the surface in ways that feel uncontrollable. In relationships, this can manifest dramatically. Let's say you pride yourself on being calm and reasonable, so you squash any expression of anger. Over time, this anger might accumulate and eventually erupt during a trivial argument, leaving your partner and you bewildered by the disproportionate intensity of your reaction. By acknowledging anger as a normal human emotion, part of your shadow, rather than an alien or evil force, you can find healthier outlets, such as talking openly about your feelings or engaging in physical activities that let you release tension. This preemptive release keeps the beach ball from exploding to the surface in a destructive manner. One of the most compelling ideas in shadow work is projection. Jung posited that when we refuse to accept parts of ourselves, we often spot those traits in others, magnifying our emotional responses toward them. For instance, if you grapple with insecurities about your own competence, you might be highly critical of individuals who project confidence, or you might belittle people who excel in areas where you feel uncertain. This isn't merely a quirk of human psychology, it's a mirror. The external world reflects back to us the aspects of ourselves we haven't yet embraced. Jung put it succinctly, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness in others. Projection can also show up in more positive forms. Have you ever admired someone to the point of putting them on a pedestal? Sometimes the admirable traits you see in that person are actually dormant within you, but you haven't found a way to activate or own them. For example, you may idolize a public speaker's captivating stage presence, never realizing you possess a similar charisma that's waiting for the chance to emerge. Recognizing projection in both negative and positive contexts can help you reclaim the qualities you've either hidden or overlooked within yourself. Practically, you can begin noticing projections by asking reflective questions whenever you feel triggered or starstruck by someone. What exactly bothers or fascinates me about this person? Is there a part of me that's similar? Am I projecting my own dissatisfaction or admiration onto them? By diligently practicing this type of introspection, you can gradually gather the scattered pieces of your psyche. Let's link the idea of the shadow to our life's mission. Often, the sides of ourselves we shove into the background are deeply entwined with our special talents and drives. Someone who buries their creativity out of fear of being inadequate might discover that welcoming this creative side reveals their true calling. Jung believed that purpose isn't uncovered in the outer world, it emerges from within. It's about harmonizing with our genuine self, encompassing both our light and our shadow. As he famously said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Imagine an individual who has always loved music but was discouraged from pursuing it because there's no stability in that career. They might push aside their musical passion, labeling it a frivolous hobby. However, the craving for musical expression remains in their shadow. This unaddressed desire could manifest as restlessness or even resentment. Perhaps they feel drawn to creative fields but stay stuck in a job that doesn't allow that spark. Through shadow work, acknowledging that suppressed passion can reignite a sense of purpose. They may not necessarily quit their job to become a full-time musician, but incorporating music into their life through open mic nights, social media content, or teaching could bring fulfillment. Your purpose often isn't a linear path or a single big epiphany. It's more like an evolving tapestry woven from your experiences, talents, and even your wounds. When you integrate the parts of yourself you've rejected, you add richer textures and hues to that tapestry. It's a continuous dynamic process rather than a one and done revelation. How do we begin aligning with this deeper sense of self? It commences with earnest inquiry. Ask yourself probing questions. What do I fear most about myself? Which traits have I been told are unacceptable? Which dreams or passions have I abandoned? Note them down. Reflect on them. You may be astonished by what arises when you offer your shadow a platform to speak. Another method Jung frequently recommended was journaling. He often urged his patients to document their dreams because they offer a direct link to the unconscious. In the dream realm, the shadow might appear as a person, animal, or even a situation. Paying attention to recurring dream symbols can shed light on what your unconscious mind is striving to communicate. Think of journaling as building a bridge between your conscious self and your unconscious. In your waking life, you operate mostly on logic and external stimuli, work responsibilities, social pressures, errands to run. In your dream life, you explore the labyrinth of your own mind. By faithfully recording dreams, even if they initially seem nonsensical, you might notice recurring motifs, a locked door, a specific color, or an archetypal figure, like a wise mentor or menacing pursuer. These can act as signposts. Also, beyond dreams, journaling about your day's highs and lows can help you spot emotional patterns or triggers. Maybe you realize that you always feel anxious around a particular co-worker, or you consistently get a burst of energy in the evenings when you can be alone. Rather than simply ignoring these details, shadow work suggests digging into them. What about that co-worker provokes you? What does that burst of evening energy say about your personal rhythms or unexpressed needs? By maintaining a written record, you create a tangible archive that you can revisit and analyze over time. Contemplate the profound shift that occurs when you merge the shadow into your conscious self. Think of an artist who refuses to use dark tones in their work. The resulting piece might be pretty, but lack depth. When we incorporate our shadow, we become creators who utilize the entire palette, both light and dark, producing a masterpiece. Integration doesn't mean succumbing to all your darker impulses. It's about acknowledging and accepting them as part of your humanity. This fosters empathy, not just for yourself, but for others too. Recognizing that everyone has a shadow forms a powerful bond among us all. In interpersonal relationships, acknowledging this universal human condition can significantly diminish conflict and enhance understanding. By admitting, I have darkness and so do you can approach disagreements with more compassion. Instead of viewing someone's anger, jealousy, or fear as an offense directed solely at you, you start to realize they might be reacting from their own wounded or suppressed parts. This viewpoint doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it frames it in a broader psychological context, allowing for potential resolution, or at least a more measured response. When integrated effectively, your shadow becomes a wellspring of creativity. Many iconic works of art, literature, and music are born from the artist's exploration of the darkest corners of their psyche. Think of Vincent van Gogh's tumultuous emotional states, transformed into paintings of haunting beauty. James Baldwin channeled societal shadows around race and identity into literature that shook and shaped public consciousness. Even in business, some entrepreneurs draw on their shadow, such as a burning desire to prove oneself or to address an injustice they faced, as the rocket fuel behind their ventures. In your own life, think about a project you once abandoned or never started because you feared failure or judgment. Re-examining it through the lens of shadow work might reveal that it represents a crucial part of yourself. By no longer exiling this passion, you unleash creativity that had been bottled up. This could manifest in writing a book, producing a podcast, launching a non-profit, or simply exploring a hobby that fills you with joy and purpose. The more you align with your shadow, the more you notice changes in your self-expression and sense of certainty. Characteristics and feelings that once seemed daunting or embarrassing begin to feel like wells of strength and insight. By allowing these traits into the light, you become more authentic, confident, and purposeful in your everyday life. In the next and final section, we'll reveal the ultimate truth about the shadow and how fully welcoming it can spark a profound transformation, both within you and in the wider world. Stay tuned as we share the final, most significant insight that will bring all of this together and illuminate your journey toward your greatest potential. Some people describe this process as shedding layers of artifice. Instead of going through life wearing a mask that projects what you believe others want to see, you start living from a place of genuine self-knowing. That doesn't mean you flaunt every shadow aspect in public, but rather that you aren't afraid to acknowledge it or let it guide you positively. As you release the mental energy spent on hiding, you free up bandwidth to explore, create, and form deeper connections. This authenticity can be highly attractive. Friends, romantic partners, and even professional networks often gravitate towards someone who radiates a sense of self that includes, rather than denies, their own complexities. As we near the end of this exploration, let's revisit the magnitude of what we've uncovered. The shadow, that hidden realm of our being we're taught to fear, is not a burden. It's a gift waiting for us to open it. It contains the keys to our truest expression, our innovative spark, and even our life's calling. But how do we genuinely integrate our shadow? And what does this merging look like? Not just inside us, but in the broader sweep of our lives. We must confront a principle Jung emphasized: Wholeness does not happen by rejecting parts of ourselves. It arises from unity, from blending all aspects of our psyche into balance. Jung put it this way: one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That's the heart of shadow work. Not denying what's dark, but shining awareness on it, owning it, and harnessing it for growth. You might ask, what does wholeness feel like? While it's different for each person, many describe it as a sense of internal coherence. You're not locked in endless internal battles trying to keep certain fears or desires at bay. Instead, you're able to say, yes, I feel envy sometimes, and that's okay. I use that awareness to understand what I truly want and to celebrate the achievements of others without resentment. This kind of wholeness also translates into more fluid creativity. When you don't police your own thoughts and emotions harshly, you allow unusual or startling ideas to surface without immediate censorship. In personal relationships, wholeness helps you communicate more honestly and listen more empathetically, because you recognize that everyone is carrying hidden burdens. One profound way to bring your darkness into the light is through vulnerability. By freely admitting your anxieties, weaknesses, and uncertainties, you strip them of the power to control you. Vulnerability isn't a sign of weakness, it's a powerful acknowledgement that says, this is me, fully. Think about how often we only present the parts of ourselves we believe that others will accept. While this habit is natural, it also keeps us from genuine connection. Embracing your shadow means you let people see and appreciate the real you. And this kind of authenticity has a magnetic pull. It encourages deeper trust and more substantial relationships. Socially, there is a common tendency to equate vulnerability with shame. If people see my fear or insecurity, they'll judge me. Yet, time and again, psychological research and personal testimonies show that when someone is brave enough to be authentic, others often respond with support and respect. Of course, it matters who you're being vulnerable with. Not everyone is safe or open-minded. However, practicing vulnerability with trusted friends, mentors, or in therapy can usher in a kind of emotional liberation that no amount of superficial bravado can match. Moreover, vulnerability can be an engine for creative or professional breakthroughs. If you're writing a novel, making a film, or designing a new product, your personal experiences, shadow included, can add depth and authenticity. Audiences sense when a creator puts their whole self into a project. This resonates more than a polished but emotionally hollow presentation. In the workplace, sharing vulnerabilities respectfully, like admitting you need help on a complex task, can foster team cohesion and spark collaborative problem solving. Also, keep in mind that this internal shift radiates outward. Once you stop waging war with yourself, you begin approaching life's ups and downs from a place of balance. You're operating from wholeness, not fragmentation. Purpose isn't just a job title or a lofty external goal. It's an organic outcome of living as your authentic self, shadow and all. Ponder this. Your purpose is not solely about what you do. It's about who you are. It's the distinct mix of your abilities, interests, and even your challenges that shape how you add meaning to the world. The shadow is an essential piece of that puzzle, not a hindrance to it. Think of your personality like a mosaic. Each tile, your childhood memories, your proudest achievements, your secret shames, your quirkiest habits, forms part of the overall image. Remove any tile and the picture is incomplete. When you welcome your shadow, you're saying yes to all those tiles. You see their role in the grand design and acknowledge that even the darker colors add depth and contrast. This holistic self also tends to be more resilient in the face of adversity. When you're no longer expending energy hiding or denying significant parts of your identity, you have more capacity to cope with life's inevitable curveballs. If you're wondering how to pinpoint your purpose, start by noticing which aspects of your shadow contain the seeds of passion or longing. Maybe your suppressed competitiveness points to a yearning for excellence in a sport or business venture, Perhaps your hidden penchant for drama signals a love for storytelling or acting. By bravely exploring these once rejected sides of yourself, you might stumble upon the very thing you're here to offer the world. Now let's address the most profound discovery of all. Jung taught that integrating the shadow doesn't just alter an individual, it has the power to shift the entire human narrative. Why? Because when you grapple with and make peace with your own darkness, you become more caring, perceptive, and empathic. You see that your hardships aren't yours alone, they're part of the greater human story. Imagine a world where more people recognize and welcome their own shadows, instead of pushing them onto others as blame or scorn. Judgments would diminish, understanding would deepen, and our collective path would lean closer to enlightenment. That's the transformative energy of shadow work. It's not solely about bettering ourselves, but about steering humanity toward a more conscious, interlinked, and compassionate existence. We can see glimpses of this in movements that encourage open dialogue about mental health, social inequality, and personal accountability. When a community acknowledges its shared traumas and unspoken fears, it can begin to heal collectively. The same principle applies on a family scale, an organizational level, or even across nations. The more we practice this kind of introspection, both personally and socially, the more we diffuse destructive cycles of projection, scapegoating, prejudice, aggression. Instead, we create space for empathy, mutual respect, and inclusive progress. Furthermore, when individuals break free from personal illusions and self-judgment, they often discover a newfound capacity for service and altruism. They become mentors, activists, innovators, people who sense a connection to the broader human journey. This is the real power behind Jung's insight, to see that each person's journey toward wholeness contributes to humanity's gradual evolution toward unity. With that in mind, here's a challenge: explore within. Don't only focus on what makes you proud, but also on the traits or emotions you've tried to lock away. Ask, what lessons do these hidden parts want to teach me? How can I harness their insights to live more authentically? What steps can I take immediately to embark on this integrative path? Realize that this isn't a final destination. It's a lifelong, ever-deepening journey. But each stride draws you nearer to the person you're destined to be, someone with true depth, purpose, and completion. A practical first step might be scheduling brief moments of introspection each day, maybe 5 minutes after lunch or before bedtime. During that time, contemplate one emotion or reaction you had that day that felt unusual or intense. Ask yourself, was I anxious, angry, overjoyed? Why might I have felt that way? Rather than dismissing or rationalizing it, practice acceptance. I felt rage when my co-worker took credit for my idea. What part of me does that rage represent? A sense of injustice, a fear of being overshadowed. Even a small, consistent practice like this can gradually peel back layers of self-denial. If you find meditation or mindfulness daunting, consider simpler forms of reflection. Some people find walking in nature or performing a repetitive task like knitting, gardening, or washing dishes provides mental space to tune to subtle emotional currents. The key is consistency, an ongoing willingness to look inward without judgment. Remember, this isn't where your journey ends, it's where it begins anew. You're stepping into a new chapter where you accept every facet of who you are, moving boldly into the life you were always meant to live. As we wrap up, consider sharing your reflections and questions. What did this exploration of the shadow bring to the surface for you? Which ideas resonated? Your realizations might spark courage in someone else to take their own first step into this work. This is just the beginning of a more honest and transformative chapter for all of us, one in which we celebrate every aspect of ourselves and walk forward with genuine purpose. Thank you for joining in on this exploration, and may you move forward with renewed clarity and inner peace. As you integrate shadow work into your life, you might feel moments of discomfort or confusion. This is normal, and in fact, a strong sign that you're entering uncharted psychological territory. Embrace it as part of the process. Share your experiences with close friends or a supportive community. Sometimes Simply speaking out loud about your fears or epiphanies can accelerate your understanding. If at any point you feel overwhelmed, consider seeking a professional counselor, psychologist, or therapist experienced in depth psychology. They can offer guidance, structure, and a safe space for deeper exploration. Most importantly, celebrate small victories. Maybe you caught yourself mid-projection, recognized it, and chose to respond differently. Perhaps you acknowledged an old insecurity and decided to tackle a challenge anyway. Each instance of conscious engagement with your shadow is a step toward a richer, more integrated life. Over time, you'll likely find that you've not only healed parts of your past, but also unleashed fresh possibilities for your future. In summary, Carl Jung's concept of the shadow invites us to see our deepest fears, self-doubts, and hidden qualities, not as barriers, but as gateways to authenticity, creativity, and purpose.